Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe, Kyle, and Ray. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. And that makes 189 episodes. 189 ought to do it, don't you think? You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll do one more. And welcome to Reviews Without Remorse, episode 190. And in this episode, the boys will discuss the 2025 Academy Award nominations. Director David Lynch has passed away. We will discuss and pay our respects. We check out the trailer for Daredevil Born Again. And then the boys will discuss 2001's Ocean's 11. What's up, gentlemen?
Hello, hello.
How we doing?
Good to be back.
A lot of movies to watch.
You think we need one more? You look like you need one more. You think we need one more? We'll get one more.
So, the Academy Award nominations dropped. Is everyone as excited as I am?
I used to be. I was the kind of guy who used to have a viewing party every year for the Oscars, and I would watch every. I really made it a point to watch every single Best Picture nominee before the ceremony. This year, I haven't seen any of them, and I've only even heard of maybe 2 or 3. Why don't I care anymore? This is weird. I mean, I haven't stopped going to the movies. I haven't stopped loving movies. But for some reason, I guess maybe since the pandemic, I just stopped caring about the Oscars.
Yeah, I feel very similarly, and honestly, it hurts. It genuinely hurts because I was the same way. I was really the same way. I used to. I remember I had friends who would throw little, shindigs, and we would watch the Oscars or whatever, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, but now it's just terrible, and it's funny too because I feel like the only one I even have any interest in is Dune Part 2. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I definitely want to see that one. The rest of them, I really have no. I don't even know if I know any of these things. I literally would have to look them all up to find out what they are. So my interest has just cratered to nothing.
I'd like to see No Direction Home just because I like Bob Dylan, but that's the only one that's jumping out at me. Is like, oh, I've got to see this. Yeah. And even that looks like a rental as opposed to a go out and see it in the theater kind of movie.
Yeah, not necessarily like a huge big screen event, but that definitely does look good. Dune 2 for sure, but any of these award shows they've lost all luster for me just because it's. I mean, I could get down with some art house films, sure, but some of the concepts and the stuff that they're giving awards for is just kind of wacky. I mean, Dune 2 is getting snubbed for a film about like a drug dealer cartel member that wants to. It's a male that wants to turn into a woman. Like, what? Really? You're going to get rid of Dune with all those visual effects for like a really, really shitty musical? That makes no sense to me. Like, it's not my thing anymore.
And let's be honest. I mean, it checks all the boxes, so that's why that one. And again, I'm not just saying that. Everything I've heard about it is that, and the little bits that I've seen, the clips look awful. Like I've heard that as far as a musical is concerned, there's nothing about this that has really any artistic merit, but it's a real bad film. But of course they're going to prop this up just because, so yeah. Oh, it's really, talk about just losing all credibility.
And if I look back at some of my favorite films that have won Best Picture, like Chariots of Fire, Gladiator, Dances with Wolves, some of these Platoon are so a part of the American pop cultural zeitgeist. I don't see that happening from any of these films. Nobody's really talking about them. If someone quotes Titanic to you, you know exactly what they're talking about. Yeah. I don't see anybody on the street talking about any of these films that have been nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah,
agreed.
And it's funny. You went back to Dances with Wolves because I feel like that was when we were watching all of the films, and we we're rooting for the ones that we wanted best. I had friends who were like rooting for the other one. I mean, that's how into it at one point we were.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Let's just hope that's not the death of cinema.
It will swing the other way, I'm sure, once they start releasing movies that audiences want to see. To Joe's point, I mean, we used to compete and root for films because we were so into it. Once that comes back, I think I will tune back into the Oscar broadcast. I'm not even sure I'm going to watch this year.
What kind of beer do you like? Heineken? Fuck that shit! Pabst Blue Ribbon!
So director David Lynch passed away earlier this month. And, I know he's definitely an acquired taste, that's for sure. But I think he's definitely kind of a legend, so I think that was sort of, that was kind of big losing him. And I know he hasn't done a whole lot recently, but, the guy's he's real. I'm trying to think of the right word, but boy, is he unique, and boy, does he have a really interesting catalog of stuff.
He's got a style. When you're watching a David Lynch film, you're watching a David Lynch film. He's got a very signature look, the way he directs actors, the way that they deliver their dialogue, some of the more bizarre subject matters that he tackles, when you're in a David Lynch universe.
Yeah. He's a guy, it's funny. I actually have, like, on my server of movies, I actually, I have certain directors that I sort of give them their own categories. So if I want to go right to this director, I'll go right there, and all of a sudden all his movies pop up. And I've got a few. I've got like 7 of his movies sitting there that I've seen. And he's best known, probably. He got himself on the map, I would say, probably with Twin Peaks, the TV show. I know he did, before that he had done Blue Velvet, was an interesting one.
That is a good film.
Peaks, yeah. I think Twin Peaks, though, is where most people knew him.
And this is where I got to give a lot of respect to you guys, because I know of David Lynch. I've seen maybe like 2 of his movies that I would recognize by name, but the depth that you guys can recall, like directors and stuff like that, is far beyond me. So well done for you two.
And don't forget the original version of Dune. We were just talking about the new Dune, and David Lynch was the first person to adapt Dune as a movie.
That's right. Just to kind of tip my hat a little bit, when he did the Twin Peaks, I guess, had been out for a little bit, the TV show, before he did a film called Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which I really liked. I know it's kind of just sort of really weird. It's one of those where if my wife saw me watching this, she would be like, you're such a pretentious weirdo. And I'd be like, no, this is really good. Like, I can't put my finger on it. And there is a lot of, there's a lot of art schooly sort of stuff in here. I kind of acknowledge that. I'm having a flashback. There's parts in that movie where they do this dream sequence, and there's like a midget in it, and he's talking, and they play the audio backwards.
Do you know who I am?
So he's talking in this backwards speak, and it's just really creepy and weird. I remember when I was in college, there was a little person in college, and I remember all the people. He used to complain. All the art school majors would come up to him and say, "Would you be in my movie?" And he'd be like, "No." So I think there is a little of that in here, but honestly, I really like it.
That's funny.
I thought you were going to say you did shrooms in college and people started talking backwards to you or something.
And you just record them and play it backwards like a Beatles record.
Right.
My favorite Lynch film has got to be Mulholland Drive, because that's one of those.
Yeah.
Again, it has a lot of weird symbolism in there and a lot of unusual looking individuals. But every time I watch it, I take away something different from it. I'm still not 100% sure what's going on in that film. Every time I watch it, I develop a new theory about what the film is trying to say.
Yes.
It's a very rich movie, something that you have to pay attention to. You can't just put it on in the background. That is not a Sunday morning with a hangover, or I'll put this on while I'm doing my taxes kind of movie. You have to really watch Mulholland Drive.
That I totally agree with you. I love it's It's not very often that you come across the kind of movie that will generate tons of like fan theories about what is actually happening, and that's pretty wild. That is a really cool aspect of that movie. It's a real fascinating watch. Yeah. There's one last one that I want to mention too. He did Wild at Heart.
Hey, my snakeskin jacket! Thanks, baby! Did I ever tell you that this here jacket represents a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom?
About 50,000 times.
Nicolas Cage is in it, and it's sort of like it's in a lot of ways it's kind of almost a perfect Nicolas Cage movie because he's kind of playing this guy who sort of like kind of feels like he's sort of stuck in the 50s a little bit, and he's a little like kind of like an Elvis wannabe sort of, just enough without getting kind of silly, but the whole thing is really edgy. And I'll tell you this too, all of his soundtracks, by the way, David Lynch always has great soundtracks, and that was one of them. Wild at Heart was the Chris Isaac song Wicked Game.
Oh yeah,
that first showed up in that movie. And the rest of the soundtrack is got some of that vibe in it, and it's really, really good.
I'll have to check that one out. Well, we salute you, David Lynch. We will certainly miss you as film fans.
Cheers, David Lynch.
Ray will actually rent one of your movies now.
Thank you for finding the time. I will admit, it's not entirely unpleasant seeing you again. A lot of time has passed. By the look of it, you've come up in the world.
I could say the same about you.
The mayor serves his city. I can see you're not entirely convinced.
Can you blame me?
All right, the Daredevil Born Again trailer dropped recently. I have some feelings about it, but guys, what did you think?
I am not a good person to ask about this sort of thing because I have pretty much checked out on the MCU. I don't know what's going on. I haven't seen any of the Daredevil TV series that have come before this, but it looks entertaining. The action looks good. It looks very well shot. So if I did my Marvel homework and eventually caught up with what they've been putting out, I'd probably check this show out.
I'm actually very excited. So when the original series came out, there was a 5-issue run of comic books back in the early 90s that I became obsessed with. It was Daredevil, the Man Without Fear. I believe that was Frank Miller wrote it, 5 issues, and the show took directly from these comics. So it was like 1992, 1993 that they came out. And it was originally supposed to be a movie based off those 5 issues, and then they turned it into the series. And everything that's in those books is in that show. I love that the Punisher was there, and he's coming back. Fisk is out of prison. Fisk also, aka Kingpin. But the return of Punisher that's my guy. I like the Daredevil. I love the Punisher. I mean, Dolph Lundgren is probably my number 1 Punisher. John Bernthal is going to be my number 2, so it's going to be great to see him back.
I'm very split on this one, Kyle. I would first off, I would say to you, you definitely need to watch the Daredevil series. It was spectacular. It was really good. Now, bear in mind, this was also much earlier on. This was a series that came out before the Marvel was basically taken over by Disney. So it was a real different animal. Or I don't know if Disney might have owned it at the time, but they weren't touching any. They basically were doing a couple TV series separate. Punisher was one, Daredevil. Jessica Jones was one. They did like Power Man and Iron Fist also. And some of them kind of varied, but Daredevil was it. I mean, this was really good. So I would definitely give that a watch. But with that said, when I watched this trailer, I said, wow, that to me looks like Daredevil. That looks like the Daredevil that I saw and loved. and everything about this trailer was fantastic until I saw the Disney Plus logo, and I went, "Oh yeah." So yeah. So I'm very much kind of. I'm trying not to get too excited over it because it could go south. Because boy, you're just like you said, they haven't stuck the landing on anything recently. I shouldn't even say stuck the landing. It's just everything from the beginning, middle, and end to everything they've put out recently has been awful. So yeah, so I'm right there with you. So I really got my fingers crossed that they can pull this off.
Please state your name for the record.
Daniel Ocean.
You have been implicated in over a dozen other confidence schemes and frauds. What do you think you would do if released?
I don't know. How much do you guys make a year?
It's never been done before. You want to knock over a casino? 3 casinos? You gotta be nuts.
Exactly. This place houses a security system that rivals most nuclear missile silos.
Smash and grab job, huh? Slightly more complicated than that.
Oh, yeah.
Professional thief Danny Ocean, newly released from prison, reunites with friend and colleague Rusty Ryan and travels to Las Vegas for a multi-million-dollar con to rob 3 casinos owned by the ruthless Terry Benedict. Danny and Rusty round up a gang of accomplices to orchestrate what will be the most sophisticated, elaborate heist in casino history and win back the heart of Danny Ocean's ex-wife, Tess, in the process. Written by Ted Griffin, based on the 1960 story and screenplay by George Johnson, Jack Russell, Harry Brown, and Charles Lederer, directed by Steven Soderbergh, 2001's Ocean's 11. Gentlemen, what do we think of Ocean's 11?
I am a fan.
I think I could say the same thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of interesting for a movie where nothing happens. It's not an action movie by any means. It's more leaning comedy. It's just entertainment.
Money or love? That is the age-old question that I think men have struggled with since time immemorial, and this movie is a perfect example of that struggle and that story. Does Danny Ocean rob casinos and pull cons for money, or to win back the love of his life? And he's got to wrestle with those two things, and because it's Hollywood, he's able to succeed in getting both.
Right. He only lied about being a thief.
That's an excellent point, because it goes to show that this screenplay was really, really smart, because this could easily have been a film just about, people wanting to score a lot of cash, and that's interesting and that's fine. But it goes the extra mile and pulls in the heart. This movie has heart, and it's so perfectly placed, Yeah, first off, this film is a joy to watch. I think this is one of those where somebody says, hey, Ocean's 11 is on, and you pop it on and you just leave it on. This is not one of those movies where you have to stop and go back to the beginning and whatever else. Like, you could just watch this anytime, and it's just a pleasure to watch. It's got great style, the music works, everything about it works, and there's no kind of boring part of the film. You know what I mean? Everything about this thing is firing on all cylinders. And yeah, to your point, I think it's such a great point that it's set up to be strictly a heist movie, and then they go the extra mile and they pull in the story with Danny and Tess, and it's really, really well done. And the fact that this is almost one of those movies where you could teach a class on screenwriting just based on you could watch this and teach a class on how they wrote it. The fact that the story about the heist and the story about his lost love both hit a climax at the same moment. You know what I mean? It's like both of those storylines, which sort of seem to be separate, two individuals, they end up being completely intertwined, and both sort of hit their natural resolution at the same time. It's perfectly done.
Well, I think
this isn't about screwing the guy that's screwing your wife.
That's just what I was going to say. We learn throughout the events of the movie as they unfold that the whole reason he conceived of this heist in the first place was to win his wife back, and the money on top is gravy.
Yeah, and it's funny, and you're reminding me too. It's so great because films like this, I always find that there's a lot of examples where they get it wrong, where you're trying to dole out information to the audience, in the correct way, at the correct, you want to learn things at the right time. And a lot of films get this wrong because you'll see scenes where characters are saying things to each other or telling each other things that they would clearly already know that. So why are they saying this now? You know what I mean? Well, they're saying it for the audience because the audience needs to know these things. The plot exposition has to go somewhere. But this movie does it brilliantly. There are certain things that they know that we don't necessarily know, and we find out at the right times. There are things that the characters don't know, just like you said, like when Rusty sees Tess coming down the escalator and he's kind of doing the eye roll. He's like, her name is Tess. That, and it's so, he knows who she is, and now we're going to learn who she is, etc. So yeah. And again, like you said, Danny knew this all along, etc. But we're finding this out when Rusty finds this out. So yeah, that's just just goes to show how well written this movie is.
And at the same time, even though they're introducing some of these concepts and storylines to the audience, they also give us a little bit of shorthand dialogue, which reminds the audience that these guys know each other really well and they have worked together before. They finish each other's sentences. They don't even let one another complete their sentences because they know what the other guy is going to say. Do you think we can? Oh, in this short notice? No, I don't think we can. That sort of thing. They know each other so well, and it's so well written, and it's so quick in the dialogue that it's a shorthand to explain to the audience that these guys are pros. These guys are old friends. They've pulled jobs like this before, and they know what they're doing, and they know each other really, really well.
Absolutely. A perfect example of that is when Rusty and Danny are at the bar, and Danny just looks down and he's just like, you think we need one more? You think we need one more? Okay, we'll get one more.
Exactly.
They just feed off each other.
Yes.
Let's talk about the cast. Like, this is just top to bottom star-studded. You got George Clooney in the lead, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Julia Roberts, Andy Garcia, Don Cheadle, Bernie Mac, what's his name, Casey Affleck. Or Affleck. Who else is in there?
Affleck. Carl Reiner. Elliot Gould.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did such a good job because you're pulling in. It's interesting because, movies that sort of consider themselves ensemble movies, I tend to kind of eye roll at, and I find a lot of times they don't quite get it right. But here they have such a perfect balance of the guys who are like the hottest stars of the moment, guys who are legends, and are still knocking it out of the park. Also newcomers, people that you don't know quite as well. It's a really perfectly balanced cast.
And even the casting, I think, is an homage to the 60s version when you had Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack doing the film. They were the hottest movie stars then, and now you're getting the hottest ones for this period as well.
And everybody's given a moment to shine. Nobody's here just as filler. They're all given a scene or a moment or a line of dialogue to have that spotlight.
Even the little Chinese guy.
Which one's the amazing Yan?
The little Chinese guy.
And they hit it out of the park, every single one of them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, there are no weak links in this movie. Honestly, it's rare that you can say that. But I don't think there's a single weak link in this whole movie. Well, actually, I do have one that I might talk about, but I'll get to that.
We'll get there.
You'd need at least a dozen guys doing a combination of cons.
10 ought to do it, don't you think? You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll get one more.
All right, I can throw out my weak link. How the hell do they get the decoy bags? Where did they come from? When did they get into the vault? Why?
The decoy bags are part of the SWAT equipment. The SWAT team comes in with the plant bags, and then they did the switch, I thought.
They don't have them when they're abseiling down the shaft, and then when they blow the vault, they're there, and they're carrying out the bags with the money. Where do the hooker flyers come from?
Well,
how'd they get there?
The bags, sir. They're full of flyers for hookers.
For hookers.
Shit, now you're going to make me think about that.
Yeah.
They could, well...
And this is a question that has stumped film goers for 25 years now. Nobody really knows where the hooker flyers come from.
Damn it, Kyle. Danny Ocean is a genius, all right? He had this all planned out. Don't question it. It happened.
That's interesting. You know, it's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny that you kind of went there because I wasn't really expecting us to get down to like little details like that. But okay.
That's one of those things, watching this movie. And it took me... I don't know. I've seen this movie probably 40 times, and it took me well into my 30s before I realized, hey, wait a second, that part doesn't make sense. And somebody had to show it to me, and now I can't unsee it.
Well, I literally was just in Las Vegas last week, so I can probably tell you that it was a little old man on a little motorized scooter that was handing out the flyers for hookers, because he had a stack of them, like 8 inches thick. He probably had a plethora of them back at his place.
They're everywhere in that town.
It was the little guy on the scooter that supplied Danny Ocean for the hooker flyers.
There has to be somebody in Las Vegas whose job it is to every single night just go and clean all those up, because they were always just everywhere.
But by 6 o'clock in the morning, they're gone.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's funny. I'll tell you what. I'll give you my weak link now that you're mentioning it. Well, actually, there's two things that kind of rub me a little funny, but the big one I think for me is there's a moment where Matt Damon has been following Andy Garcia's character around and stuff, and he's shadowing him. And then him and Rusty are talking, and he's basically giving his report to Rusty. This guy does this, he does this. And then at one point, they're standing at the bottom of the staircase, and he says, "Oh, this is the highlight of my day. This is when this girl comes down the stairs, whatever."
This is just the best part of my day.
And here comes Julia Roberts. And I'm going, no. And, and again, not to be a jerk, but honestly, I was saying to myself, it's weird. When she sort of comes walking down, it's like if you're going to sort of gush about her like she's this kind of incredible, oh my God, this is the highlight of my day, and they play this music that accompanies her walking down the stairs. She looks like she's walking down the stairs feeling awkward. Like she's kind of looking out both sides, like she's looking to the left, looking to the right. She's dressed not sexy or anything like that. Like there's nothing about her to me that really warrants that reaction. I thought she was, I've always kind of felt that she's a little plain and kind of, always, she's kind of the everyday girl that a lot of women I think really like because of Pretty Woman and stuff. And she's the girl who you're rooting for because she doesn't take herself too seriously, that kind of stuff. So I thought them trying to play her up like she was just, this little slice of heaven was going to come down. Yeah, right. You're waiting for like this like drop dead unbelievable woman to come down, and it was just her. So I was like, all right, calm down, guys. Like she's
and instead you get like you get an elementary school teacher in a nice dress walking down the stairs.
Honestly, yeah, she's wearing like this kind of like smart pantsuity, not pantsuity, but you know what I mean, like just this smart suit that a regular gal would wear.
I don't know. I wouldn't say no to Julia Roberts, but I see your point. It's an actress who's renowned for her competence as an actress and not exactly being like the hot, sexy, sex kitten type.
Yeah. Well, mechanics are not hanging pinups of her on their lockers. You know what I mean?
Well said.
In Linus's defense, he is hanging around with a bunch of dudes scheming and plotting to rob a couple of casinos. So Julia Roberts could very well be the highlight of his day. He's just stalking people, taking notes.
She's better looking than Carl Reiner. We can say that.
He might want to hang out with Ruben a little longer with that hairy chest. Maybe that's his thing.
I mean, again, it's not even. I feel like I'm picking on her. Really, I'm just sort of questioning the movie right there, because I just sort of feel like it's not that she's terrible. It's just that the movie inflated her oddly. That I kind of didn't think it was. I mean, she's walking down the stairs in kind of slow motion. You know what I mean? I don't think it's slowed down enough that you would notice it really, but like they slow it down a little bit. The music comes up, and again, I get what they're trying to do, but I just kind of felt like the mood that you're shooting for doesn't match what I'm looking at on the screen.
Yeah, the big reveal is just like, okay.
Yeah, and again, I don't even think she's trying to be like overly sexy or anything like that. But again, that's what the movie's telling me.
But she and Clooney have such good chemistry that I see them as a couple. I buy that he was in love with her and she is his end game, and he's doing all of this in order to win his beloved back.
I agree with you. And again, it's going to sound like somebody's going to hear this and be like, what is this dude's problem with Julia Roberts? It's like, I'm not, I swear I'm not bagging on her for any reason. But I kind of feel like it's so well written that I think a lot of actresses in that scene would have pulled it off. I mean, honestly, like this is, I'm going to sound like I'm getting carried away, but I mean, the dialogue in this movie works almost like Shakespeare. They say like Shakespeare is so well written that any actor could pull it off, like because the material is that good. Like it's written to make actors look good, and I kind of feel like that's sort of what the material here is. So I feel like I agree with you. Like as I'm watching that scene of the two of them together, I do not for 1 second question it. I mean, they seem so perfect together. But again, I think that's much more the actual dialogue and the way it's written in the good direction by Soderbergh as opposed to her. Clooney, I think Clooney to me is one of the, and I'm not saying I'm even a gigantic fan of Clooney necessarily, but he does have a presence. I feel like he was sort of one of the last old school Hollywood actors. Like he's got great presence. I feel like he's like, in a lot of ways, I feel like maybe he was never even just tapped for some of the great things he probably could have done. In fact, I'll tell you this too. After I saw this film, and I've seen the original, I thought this was a brilliant remake of a classic film. I remember saying to myself for a long time after this, you know what? I would have loved, and I think most people would say this blasphemous, but this one sort of made me a believer. I say, I would not have minded if Steven Soderbergh took a shot at redoing North by Northwest with George Clooney as his lead, doing the Cary Grant role. I think he could have pulled it off, because if it had a similar style to this, I think that could have been something kind of interesting.
It's so funny because as you were saying that George Clooney is like sort of the last of the old school movie stars with a capital S. The person I was thinking of was Cary Grant, and that he is kind of the modern day Cary Grant, and he could play Roger Thornhill tomorrow, and I would buy a ticket to see it. I think you're absolutely right. Soderbergh and Clooney could do a North by Northwest remake, because this movie right here is a study in how to do a remake correct.
We're just supposed to walk out of there with $150 million in cash without getting stopped?
Yeah.
I would have to give my gripe with the film to a character, Don Cheadle's Basher.
Oh my God! It's so funny you say that, because that's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So the explosive expert. Just his introduction. His introduction was funny, where he's in London or wherever he is. Tossers. You had one job to do, and the alarm goes off because the one guy forgot to do it. But then him and Rusty are outside. He's getting arrested, and Rusty says, "Hey, can you do something with what I just slipped you?" Oh, it's done. Like, well, if Rusty knew what to give Basher to make an explosive, why didn't Rusty just make the explosive as the diversion? Why did you have to give him the pieces so he could put it together behind his back? Except for like a character development thing to show you how skilled he is. But his character throughout the film was lackluster for me.
I gotta tell you, I don't think I ever put even that together. I never noticed that he gave him something to connect the dots or something to make the actual.
Yeah, as he's being arrested, and he comes over, he's like, "Go find so and so. Just find him, will you?" And the cop goes away. Basher's handcuffed behind his back. He's like, "Hey, how about you put something together with what I just gave you?" He's like, "It's done." And then they toss it in the cop car and walk away when it explodes. But why would you do that? Just put it together.
Read that. I've always read that scene totally different. I always thought he was saying, "Hey, I'm putting something together, like I'm putting a plan together. Do you want in?" And he goes, "Yep, done. That's all I had to hear. I'm in." Kind of. I was not catching that at all.
Yeah, I see it Ray's way that he slips him something to blow up a cop car as the diversion. I think maybe because Basher is such the explosives expert that the movie needs to show us that, and that's why that scene is there. It's just shorthand to show the audience, like, this guy is an expert in explosives. Look what he was just able to do at a moment's notice with his hands behind his back, created big enough diversion that they could escape from the cops.
I absolutely have to rewatch this now and watch out for this, because I that went over my head. I've never caught that, and now that you say it, it does make sense, because if you notice, I think a lot of the guys in here sort of kind of do a sort of an audition, meaning like they go to see The Amazing End, and he's sitting there watching him going like, this doesn't look too hard. And then he does the backflip. He goes, all right, we got a grease man.
We got a grease man.
And there's a couple parts where, some of the old school guys, not so much, but like some of the younger guys, like he talks about what they do. They show the clip of Radio Shack in the truck with the guys, so that tells us what he's doing.
Don't touch it.
And Linus is the expert pickpocket. We see that
right. Yes,
in his introduction.
Oh, and the Mormon twins, they got it. My wife loves the Mormon twins. What are their names? Virgil and Turk. Just their intro, that when they're racing the race car versus the monster truck and he runs it over, how genuine of a laugh that is. Like, that's not him acting. He probably literally ran that RC car over and just cackled his ass off. The balloon boy bit was, I think, is hysterical. Yes. Like, I quote that all the time. I just think it's funny as hell.
I don't have time for you circus animals.
Balloon boy.
And then and that's great too, because honestly, that honestly, that's what I mean. Like, there's no wasted scenes in this. I kind of feel like every scene in this movie is well done and with purpose. It's all. There's no. I can't think of a single moment in this movie that's kind of like, if somebody said you need to cut 5 minutes out of this, I would have no idea what to cut, because everything is here for a reason.
Agreed. There's not an ounce of fat on this film, and every single scene that has a setup has a payoff later on in the movie.
Yeah. I'll say this though, Ray, when you brought up Don Cheadle, I thought you were going in a different direction. I was going to agree with you. My gripe with Don Cheadle is the accent. And I kind of felt like, honest to God, and I'm sure any of our friends in the UK could tell me if I'm crazy, but I feel like that's very much an American doing a heavy duty kind of Cockney or accent.
Oh, absolutely.
And what bugs me is, like, I feel like it's almost like I can hear Don Cheadle talking to the producer saying, "Yeah, I'll do it. As long as I could do like a British accent, because I don't think I've." And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And and he does it, and it's like, "Hey, governor," and it's like, "Oh, stop!" Like, just like, you know what I mean? I feel like anybody in the UK is hearing that and going like, "Would you shut up? Nobody talks like that."
I'm almost certain that's exactly how it happened. I think he did want to bring that. He's like, "Yeah, I'll do it," but can he have a British accent? Just because he wanted to challenge himself as an actor and do that accent.
Bingo.
It's not the chimney sweep. But Americans can't play Brits the way that Brits can play Americans.
Yeah,
he's 100% doing a caricature of a Cockney accent. But he does give like one of my favorite quotes. He's like, "Oh, if we screw this up, we're in Barney Rubble, trouble." Like, I love that bit.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right.
You know what? Actually, you know what reminds me of now that we're talking about it. It reminds me of Daniel Craig doing Benet Blanc and doing that stupid Foghorn Leghorn accent.
But at least that's in a comedy. Like, that's supposed to sound stupid. I think that's the joke,
right? Yeah, but it's one of those where it's like Daniel Craig is like, "Oh, I'm gonna do an accent. It's gonna be great. You'll see. It's good. You'll love it. It's gonna be great." And then he does this, and you're like, nobody talks like that.
It'll be nice working with proper villains again.
2, 1. Well, did you check the batteries?
Well, speaking of accents, how did we feel about Saul doing Lyman Zerga?
I thought, well, I that's one of those that when the first time I saw it, I have no problem with it. But that's also one that on repeat viewings, and when you think about it, you go, but that could have gone wrong really easy, because he's trying to do a phony accent with a guy who can speak a dozen languages. You know, like you're kind of playing with fire there.
But I do like how, as he's being measured for his suit, he's testing out different Lyman Zerga voices,
inflections,
and he's trying to decide what that voice should be, what that character should sound like, and then he finally settles on, he thinks maybe it's going to be a more lighthearted older guy, until he decides that he's going to be like a really tough Israeli businessman. I do like that when he finally settles on it, and I enjoy watching that process as he's figuring out who Lyman Zerga is.
The house safe is for grandmother's pearls.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The dialogue works. It's very good, and I did like that part too.
I think it's probably my favorite part of the movie is the dialogue between all the characters, specifically Danny and Rusty. Just the way they read off each other and bounce off each other, and it just, like Kyle was saying, it just shows the connection and how deep they go with each other.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, I wrote it down so many times how snappy the dialogue is, and how much it adds to the characterization of these guys.
Now they tell me that I paid my debt to society.
Funny, I never got a check.
Scared? You suicidal?
Congratulations, you're a dead man.
He'll kill you. And then he'll go to work on you.
The heist itself, I think when the heist finally goes, I think it's really great. And again, I kind of feel like that's another great example. Like the part when Danny is about to get roughed up by the guy, and then you realize, oh, he actually knows this guy, and he's climbing up.
He's on the
rafters.
take too.
Yeah. And then you see Linus elsewhere climbing up in the elevator, and all of a sudden, like, Danny scares him. It's like, oh, geez. And that's great too, because again, it was smart the way they doled out information to the audience.
Yes.
You assume at that point, okay, so Danny kind of knew what was going on all along. Rusty must have known what was going on all along. They needed him to do this, so they sort of kind of played him into doing this a little bit. So, yeah. So again, this was all sort of planned all along. We find this out at that moment. Just top notch. Well done.
Well, the thing about
the
this
entire
movie...
plot is completely like compartmentalized, so that no one person knows too much at the same time and can ruin it. I think that's what Danny's plot was the entire time, because especially with Linus being the new guy, the young guy, he even had to be convinced to be in on the plot when they're back at Ruben's house, and he's sitting there and he's like, "All right, if you're in, you're in. Let's go. We'll talk about the plot. Here's the plan." Everybody goes in. He's left outside. And he comes over. He's like, "Oh, you're so and so's kid, aren't you? Oh, yeah, get in the fucking house." Like,
and actually, you're bringing up another interesting point, because I think that when Danny kind of basically does the overview of what the heist is, it's real bare bones minimum. Like he just says, we're gonna do it. Then there's gonna be this much money in there. We have to go in a certain way. We can't tunnel. They do certain details. And I thought it was interesting because, and when somebody says, so we're going to literally just walk out the front door with all this cash on us. And he goes, yeah. And everybody's like, oh, all right, then,
okay.
And it's interesting because it's like, it's one of those little things where they plant the seed early in the film, and it does actually come to fruition.
Yeah, that's literally what they do.
Right. And it's great because and again, on repeat viewings, you go like, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what they did. I didn't see it coming, didn't know how they were going to pull it off, but that's what happened. So it's like he wasn't lying. That's exactly what they did. And there's a lot of directors who I think would have taken shortcuts, but this guy doesn't. The story, everything about the story is earned. They earn it completely with the writing.
Well, that's what this movie does so well. The audience is constantly wondering what is happening, and it's not making us feel stupid. It's not there to insult us. It's meant to surprise, but not make us feel stupid. All of those things are there. You just have to look for them. And if you watch the movie more than once, you will notice those clues. Like, oh yeah, that thing was there all along. Of course, that's how it was going to work out when the heist is actually pulled off. It's all there if you know where to look.
And I love the fact that the movie's almost like self-aware that it has a star-studded cast too. Just going back to Rusty's poker scene at the very beginning of the movie when we're first introduced to him, and he's sitting there with all the tween idols like Topher Grace, and they're learning to play poker and everything. And he's just bored out of his mind. And then he goes out and he's sitting near the bar, and the bartender says something to him. He's like, "Oh, how's your night going?" Or he's like, "Oh, longest night of my life." What? I'm running away with your wife. Like it's just it's just fun that it can poke fun at itself, poke fun at Hollywood that way, while the entire cast is like the top tier elite of Hollywood.
But I did have a question about that. Do you think that joke about the early 2000s TV stars holds up over time? Like, will future film-going audiences remember Seventh Heaven and That 70s Show and Dawson's Creek? Like, are they going to know who those people are, or is that just something that was there because it was of the moment and it was funny then, and it's funny for us because we remember who those tween idols were? Does that have legs beyond the people who grew up watching those shows?
I would say
that's a good question.
Yeah, I would say yes, because honestly, even back then, believe it or not, I think the only one I actually knew Topher Grace, and I don't even know if I was even. I mean, he does call him Topher in the movie, right? So
they're all playing themselves, but
yeah,
Barry and Joshua, like they're all playing themselves.
But honestly, I didn't even know who the rest of those guys were, and even Topher Grace, like when he said his name, I don't even think I knew who he was at the time when I first saw it. But just the way the film plays, I get it that these guys are reasonably famous. Like there were young hotshots who had the back room at some nightclub that's obviously pretty swanky and hip or whatever. So I was already getting it that these guys were maybe B-list stars or something or other that Rusty is playing with. So yeah, I got it, even though I didn't quite get who they were.
I'm surprised neither one of you, because both of you are very accomplished poker players, have commented on their poker etiquette, which could use some work.
Yeah.
Oh God, you're not kidding.
Well, that's, I mean, seriously, yeah, all reds. Honestly, that's
splashing the pot and everything.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
I mean, that's one of those that has to. When you talk about quotable lines, I mean, anytime you're playing poker, somebody's got to go, "Hey guys, all reds."
Absolutely. And the girl when she bets, blue. Whatever the blue chip is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, all of it. I mean, honestly, okay, he's like, "What do you mean you got 5 pairs? You can't have 5 pairs. You can't have 5 cards in it. Six cards in a 5-card game.
You can't have 3 pairs in a 5-card game."
I want 4. No, you don't. You want to fold.
You want to fold.
I'll tell you what. No, you want to fold. Seriously. I mean, that stuff was just great. I just love all of it.
That's probably one of my favorite scenes of the entire film. And my favorite character, I think, has to be Rusty. I like his choice of style. We're all like Bond fans, so we have an appreciation for the sartorial. Love the way he dressed. I love the fact that in this film, if you watch it enough, you'll notice that he's always eating. He always has something. A shrimp cocktail, nachos, a drink, whatever. He's always chewing on something. This is a conversation for a later date, but in the sequel, I think they kind of forced that upon us more. Like they tried to make it like obvious that he was doing it, but it was just part of his character in this movie.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think you're absolutely right about, I think the style of this movie is a good part of. I mean, honestly, I think this film is a very worthy. It's very worthy of the namesake of. I mean, they're doing a film that was made famous by the Brat Pack. The Rat Pack.
Right.
I mean, and those are big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really do a pretty worthy job here. And you're absolutely right. The things that Brad Pitt is wearing, the things that Clooney is wearing. I mean, the scene when his first scene in Atlantic City when he's coming up the escalator, I mean, you're just like, all right, this guy's cool as all hell. And you just all of a sudden wanted to, you're looking in your closet and you're like, what the hell am I doing? I got to get stuff like that. You know what I mean? I mean, that was just brilliant. Yeah. So the whole thing, I remember looking at, there was a couple places that were doing replica suits. Somebody's redoing the suits from Ocean's 11, and you could have ordered like the suit that Rusty was wearing right there. And I'm looking at that going like, you can't have the tiniest bit of a belly, because the way the belt was, I'm like, yeah, no, unless I get, yeah,
none
right.
of us are built like Brad Pitt.
Just don't even try, you know, because the way the pants were sort of cut, I forget how it was, but it was like, it wasn't like a traditional snap or a button for the, you know, and a zipper. It was something else, and I was like, yeah, you can't pull that off unless you got zero belly.
Well, I think this whole movie reads just like this, or the whole movie comes off just like the soundtrack. It's jazz. Everybody plays off each other. Everything just works. It sounds good. It gets you in the mood. It's just excellent.
It's a very 2001 movie. I mean, it is hitting you over the head with how slick and clever it is, and that's what makes it so much fun to watch.
You're a thief and a liar.
I only lied about being a thief.
Why do this?
Because the house always wins. Unless, when that perfect hand comes along, you bet big, and then you take the house.
Been practicing this speech, a
little bit. Did I rush it? Felt like I rushed it.
That was good. I liked it.
Yeah, one other thing that if you've enjoyed this movie, which we clearly have, strong recommendation for a movie that came out last year called Wolves, which brings Clooney and Pitt back together as kind of cleaners, basically like the Winston Wolfe character from Pulp Fiction, and that's where the title comes from. They're both playing Wolf, and it's just as slick and just as funny, and it's great to see them back together again.
Nice. I got to check that out. I remember seeing that and being curious about it. Yeah, okay. I will definitely give that a watch. All right. Time to do your scores, gentlemen. Who wants to go first?
All right. I'm going to give this one a 9. It is damn near perfect. There is one little thing, and it's such a cop-out thing that I don't like about it. But anytime this movie is on, or if I'm just in the mood for like a hangout movie, I will definitely throw in Ocean's 11. It's one of the first DVDs that I ever owned back when like making the transition from tape to DVD was happening, and I had the presence of mind to get it in widescreen, which was the right call because televisions became widescreen. So, and it's also just like the quintessential Vegas movie with swingers and diamonds are forever. So anytime before you're going to Vegas or when you've just come home from Vegas, you got to watch Ocean's 11.
If I'm going to give it a score, I'm going to go a 9.3. I think it's. I'm taking a nod to Portnoy with the decimal points. It's damn near perfect. It's one of those movies where if I'm flipping through the channels and nothing's on, and I come across it, I'm landing on that. And that's what's going to stay on. Same thing if there's nothing on and I go through the DVD collection, I'm like, oh man, it's been a minute. I'll pop in Ocean's 11 and I will not be disappointed or bored. 9.3, solid. And if you actually were to get bored or just want to mix it up a little bit, for those of us that remember Mystery Science Theater 3000, I sent you guys a link to it and all. The same guys do a thing called Riff Tracks, where they just comment on a movie while you're watching it off of an MP3. And it adds another element beyond just the original film and just makes it watchable for a whole other reason. Not to say that it's not great on its own, because, again, I'm giving it a 9.3. It's one of my top 10 favorite movies.
Ray, I think in your honor, I'm going to give this a 9.003.
A double of 3.
I'm gonna take my 9, and I'm gonna take the razor blade from Goodfellas, and the way he does the garlic. I'm just gonna
really
slice
thin.
it tiny little paper thin. So it's a 9 plus a tiny little sliver. Yeah, I definitely think this is a solid 9. I think that there's a part of me that says, but this is kind of just sort of like a fun movie. Shouldn't you save the 10s for like the Godfathers and the Citizen Kanes or whatever? Nah, I don't. Honestly, I can't find flaw with this film. It's such a I'm not exaggerating when I say this is the kind of screenplay that I think should be taught in film schools. It is such a well put together film. As we said, there's no fluff. There's nothing in here that is not with a purpose. It's just so well put together. So yeah, I definitely think it's a clear 9. I think it's really a brilliant film. So and again, I kind of feel like it's almost like Steven Soderbergh is honestly one of the great directors of our time, I think. And I almost think this film is he's purposely making it fun so that you don't know how good this is in a way. It's like he's very clever in making it look like this is just a simple, fun movie, yet behind the scenes, he has really crafted something that's very smart. So definitely a solid 9.
We're all on the same page. I like it.
How come the pinch doesn't knock out their cell phones or their comms or anything like that?
Damn it, Kyle. Danny is a genius. Everything was in a Faraday bag. Stop.
All right, guys. For your consideration, what do we got?
To me, it's a no-brainer. For me, it's the script. I mean, it's so good. Whether it's the dialogue and how it's delivered, the central conflict of money or love, or just the story and the way that they assemble the team and how they all trust each other. It's just incredibly well written. So I have to go with the script.
I'm going to pick something that I think is sort of weird. The shot of Danny coming up the escalator in Atlantic City. I feel like that is sort of the moment where you find out what kind of film you're in for. That just that moment alone, it's so well shot. Again, he looks just cool as hell, and he's dressed perfectly. I feel like that's the moment where the scene where he's in the jail cell he's in the parole hearing, and then even as he's walking out, it's still kind of got that kind of cold, kind of, where the film looks almost a little grungy, sort of. Very well done. And then they show him kind of coming up the escalator and again, I think that's purposely done, like he's the phoenix kind of rising from the dead, sort of, coming up the escalator. So I think it was a very, very smart, well put together shot. And again, that's the first time where I think you really start to see, oh, that's what kind of movie this is. Okay, I get it now. So I'll give it to that one.
I don't know how you watched it, but that is actually the DVD menu screen, that shot. So
nice.
every time you pop the DVD in, it is showing you that when you push play.
That's interesting. I wonder if I knew that. I know I actually have this on DVD, but it's been ages since I've had a DVD player, actually.
All right, I guess I'm up. I'm going to go with Ruben Tishkoff. I think he was the most in-depth. No, I'm only kidding. I think I'm going to echo you. I'm going to echo you both and say both the cast and dialogue. I don't think if you were to have chosen, aside from Julia Roberts, maybe other actors to play these roles, you would get the same banter and aesthetic that you get from the cast that's actually in there. They feed off each other well. They work well. You were even saying, George Clooney and Brad Pitt in another movie, they just have that chemistry. All the chemistry with this cast works together with the dialogue, and that's what makes it so enjoyable for me.
Who asked you? I'll go first, only because I don't have anything that we haven't already covered. The two things that annoy me, and again, very mild complaints, but it's Don Cheadle's accent and it's Julia Roberts. And again, and I promise I'm not picking on Julia Roberts. I almost feel like if there's a weakness, it's really in the fact it's almost like this film seems like it was written by men for men, and somebody just grabbed, okay, who's the hot actress today? Oh, Julia Roberts. And they kind of just dropped her into a story that might have been written for somebody else. And so it leaves her in kind of awkward moments. Even the scene right after that, like I talked about the staircase scene, which I thought was a little weird. Even the expression on her face as she's walking down, she seems to be looking around like she's like, what am I supposed to be doing? But they cut to a scene right after that where she's in the museum and she's looking at one of the pieces, but she's kind of sitting there with this kind of, I get what they're going for. Like now she's sort of like in the power suit and she's standing there looking kind of like she's serious and she's looking at this thing, but she's kind of got this scowl on. And again, I don't think it's not what they were going for. I think it's almost like I feel like if it's maybe the one weakness that Soderbergh might have. It's like, dude, you need somebody who's going to direct her, and get the thing from her that you're looking for, because you're writing one thing and she's doing something different. So in the spirit of, if I was in the room, what would I have suggested? That would have been something like that.
I think I already know the answer, but who would you rather cast instead of Julia Roberts?
Honestly, that's tough because, to your point before, she works because she's I don't think she's the best actress, but she works because she's an actress, and you needed somebody who could deliver lines. So I think you really did need somebody who's kind of got, you need somebody who's going to wow you looks wise, but also can act and deliver the lines correctly. So as much as I'm tempted to say, I feel like looks wise, I'm thinking like that would have been like Catherine Zeta-Jones, she's somebody who, she comes down the staircase, you're going to go, wow, this is the high point of my day. But again, I don't know that she was very strong in deliveries. I mean, there's other actresses that come to mind. Cate Blanchett comes to mind, if they kind of sort of dolled her up a little bit and, tried to fancy her up a little bit more than she usually does. But I don't know if I can think of the perfect. And again, that's my problem, is that the script seems to be written for this sort of picture of perfection, and I don't know who that is exactly.
I expected to hear Salma Hayek, but
I swear I was thinking it, but honestly, but she's got it in the looks department. I don't know that she could have delivered the lines quite as well. So again, this is what I'm saying. I mean, Julia Roberts delivered lines great. She performed well, but yeah. Maybe again, I did say that the lines are written so well that a lot of people could have pulled it off. So maybe her.
And if you want to see Cate Blanchett in a similar role, a movie came out right around the same time as Ocean's 11, maybe 3-4 months earlier, called Bandits, with Billy Bob Thornton and Bruce Willis. And Cate Blanchett is playing basically the Tess character.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, man. So we're talking about our gripe with the film.
It's a tough one.
All right, so I already complained about Basher, his character. My thing was just the way they had to show his talents and introduce him. Didn't make sense to me. We've talked about Julia Roberts. I don't know, man. That's a really tough one. Shit, I'm kind of drawing a blank. I really can't think of anything that I would really complain about. I gave it a 9.3, so leave me alone.
That's fair. If you don't have anything, you don't have to pick something on every movie.
There's really nothing that I would change. I enjoyed everything about it. The soundtrack was awesome. The dialogue, the cast, the script. Maybe I can bash on Andy Garcia, his character a little bit. I didn't quite understand his whole thing with being watched in the casino. I don't know if that was a security risk kind of thing. Like when he's in the art museum with Tess and he's looking and she leans in for the kiss, he kind of backs away and looks up. He's like, in my hotel, there's always someone watching. So I don't know if that was like a security thing for her safety. Can't be seen like doing that. But if you're going to know that he's dating her. They're always together at some point. So I didn't quite get why he was so cold to her and why she would be attracted to that, unless that was a money power thing. And that's why she left Danny in the first place, or was trying to go with the complete opposite of Danny. So I didn't really quite understand Julie Roberts or Tessa's dynamic with Terry Benedict's.
Yeah, that's fair. I see your point. Yeah, it's a good point. They don't really get into that too much. The whole, how did she end up with this guy? Why did how did this all sort of happen? I don't think you need to for this particular story, but yeah, that was a good point. It does.
Yeah, I don't particularly buy that they are in love.
Very good. I'll take it.
So my problem with this movie, and it's such a cop-out answer, this movie is almost too good. It's too slick for its own good. There's too much star power that a sequel was inevitable. And the sequels to this movie suck. So the fact that I had to sit through Ocean's 12, Ocean's 13, because this movie was so good and it guaranteed sequels, and the sequels were just so poor in comparison, because it's so hard to recapture that magic. It's just not there. It's lightning in a bottle. You can only have it one time, and the sequels just could not live up to how good this movie is.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, again, I don't think we'll probably ever review those, because why bother? But yeah.
Fine with me.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, 12 was so annoying because it was this stupid, annoying. It was like an inside joke. It was so stupid. 13 was trying to kind of get it back, but
it's
it kind of
little bit better, but it's
a little bit better, but it feels very plastic compared to the first one.
And then there was the Sandra Bullock remake with all the women cast.
That was tough to get through, honestly.
I don't think I ever saw it.
It's better than 12.
I guess maybe that's true. Honestly, I remember I saw that with my wife and her sister-in-law. We were up at the Cape, and just they wanted to rent a movie, and that was out, and they were like, "Oh, what about this one?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess I should." It was one of those I felt like that's a good excuse to watch it, so I can see what it is or whatever. Wow, it was so weird because I never saw. That movie is a perfect example of don't just do the movie again and put women in it and just say it's good because it's got, like, you're showing the limitations of that movie. It literally starts out in the jail cell. I'm like, are they literally going to remake this movie like shot for shot?
Mm-hmm.
And every decision they made in that, she's stealing from people, stealing people's stuff, stealing their rooms. She's not doing this for the love of a lost love. Instead, she's doing it to get back at a rotten ex. It was like every decision they made in this was wrong. It's like I don't I don't like this character. I'm not rooting for this character because I don't like the things that she's doing and all that stuff. So.
Ghostbusters, excuse me.
Touche, Raymond. Touche.
Well, what I did like about the sequels, I mean, you have the original, Ocean's 11. Then the sequel, Ocean's 12, you had Andy Garcia's Revenge. And then 13, they team up all together to go against the French guy, right? So, like, they take from Terry takes from them, and now they have to team up to get this other guy. So at least they were trying to mix it up a little bit, at least.
I'll say that. They certainly did not just do a repeat of the first one. It was just this kind of like, hey, it's all fun when we all get together, so let's just get together and we'll just see what happens.
It's hard to get that magic back a second time.
You're either in or you're out. Right now.
Gentlemen, I think that's Ocean's 11. I think that is our second podcast, and again, kind of a pretty good one. I like that we started off with something that I don't think either of us cared for all that much, and we went the other way, and now we saw a film that we absolutely all very much enjoyed and really admired.
It's a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed this very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, folks, thank you for listening, and we will be back next week with another podcast, so we will see you very soon. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe, Kyle, and Ray. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. You can also find our episodes on our YouTube channel. Check the link in the description. All clips in this podcast are for commentary and critique and are considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
No, I'm just saying that I interviewed the president last time, and now I'm gonna, go back to interviewing dumb actors. That's all I'm saying. No, it's fine. It's fine. He's a big star.
Hi. Welcome to another edition of Between Two Ferns. I'm your host, Zach Galifianakis. My guest today, Bradley Pitts. Bradley Pitts, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
How old were you when you lost your virginity? 0? I'll tell you about when I lost my virginity.
I would really not like to hear that.
Showers. Why don't you take them? You play a lot of people that are kind of Nazi haters, which is weird to me.
Why do you say that?
Because you look like Hitler's dream.
Huh. Yes, I understand the conundrum of it all.
Naked pictures of you were in Playgirl magazine many years ago, and I only know that because my dad got a subscription for me after I graduated from junior high school. And anyway, tell us about this movie, Furry.